Hello, everyone, and welcome to our IRSF RettEd, partnering with your pharmacist, a spoonful of ways to help the medicine go down. We're so happy to have you with us today. We're excited to have Belinda George and Brian Stell with us as key speakers to educate you as to ways that your pharmacist can really help partner with you. All of us at rettsyndrome.org, at IRSF, our board and our staff believe that all information should be free and available to anyone who avails themselves of this information. So Belinda, if you can take us to the next slide. We want to thank our sponsors, Acadia Pharmaceuticals, Novartis, and Taysha Gene Therapies for supporting our education programming. I'm going to give a few community updates before we launch into our presentation. Next slide. We're very excited that next month, as you know, is our month. It's October Rett Syndrome Awareness Month. We encourage everybody to take the time on your social feeds, in your communities, in your classrooms, day programs, in your therapy units to spread awareness of Rett syndrome in October. We are a small, rare disease and awareness is everything. So we invite you to join our website to look for informational downloads that can help you spread awareness, as well as visit our store and rock your merchandise. If you wear it, people will ask you about it, and you'll have a great opportunity to start a conversation about Rett syndrome and bring people into our shared cause. Next slide. We also want to remind you that we're preparing for our Ascend Summit in 2022 in the beautiful music city of Nashville, Tennessee. Early registration is open, and we hope you'll join us for our first live in-person family conference, April 27th through 30th. It'll be our first time in a number of years being in person, and nothing is better to have a chance to meet with our experts in person and meet other families face-to-face. Next slide. Oops, sorry. That's okay. All right, so let's get right to business here. So Belinda George is going to introduce herself. She has a granddaughter with Rett syndrome. She knows what she's talking about and has been practicing for a lot of years. For our new families who are joining us, I don't want you to think that a lot of medications are necessarily in your child's future. Some children will live their lifetime with needing nothing more than the occasional Advil or Tylenol for some pain management, or maybe some vitamin or supplements. Other kids may go on and have some very complex medication needs, from GI reflux management to seizure control to anxiety medications to a lot of maybe supplements and vitamins and minerals to make sure that they have a complete diet. So we want today's talk to be educational for if and when you find yourself visiting your pharmacy frequently, and know that you can use your pharmacist as an expert on your team. We have shared your questions that you pre-submitted at registration with our speakers today, and they have incorporated answers into their talk. But we also invite you, as you're hearing from our speakers, to type questions into the QA field that come to mind, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. So with that being said, Belinda, I'd love for you to get started and walk us through how you can be a partner in caring for children with Rett syndrome, or anyone else in your family. This information might apply to yourself.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what I think can be information that'll be really helpful to families. As Paige said, you may or may not become very well acquainted and in need of pharmacy services. Quick background, I've been a pharmacist for, I hate to admit, nearly 40 years. My career has spanned working for HMOs, being head of a state Medicaid agency, and also a number of years direct patient care, both in a retail setting and a psychiatric hospital setting. So it's been a long haul. I've had a lot of experience. I'm thrilled to be able to share some things today about the practice of pharmacy and about what I think pharmacists can do for you, and also some tips on how you can be your own advocate at the pharmacy. The first thing I want to do is just put in a little plug for pharmacy in general. keep in mind, there are two big things about pharmacists that make us different than almost every other provider you're going to see. We are completely accessible. All you have to do is walk into the store and you've got someone in front of you that can be an excellent resource for you. We don't charge for that. So that is another big plus. You don't have, most times don't have to make an appointment unless there's an immunization involved. And in the US, your average pharmacist has about 7 to 8 years education after high school to prepare them for pharmacy. They've passed a national license exam as well as a state exam. So you've got people with a lot of education and experience who can be your ally. And I sort of on the slide here put out a few ways I hope you'll think of us. One of the first is that we can be a vital link to your doctor's office. Everybody these days in healthcare is interconnected. You're going to have to navigate insurance, refill authorizations, questions, clarifications. Your pharmacist is in an excellent position to work directly with your doctor's office, be your interface to them so that you're not having to spend your time calling multiple people about a drug issue. Call your pharmacist, see if they can't be your liaison and your help on that. Also, when it comes to insurance billing requirements, prior authorization, vacation medications, manufacturer coupons, your pharmacy and your pharmacist and pharmacy technicians are the experts. Some doctor's offices will help you with, may have some manufacturer coupons around, but pharmacies are really well suited to help you with any of those issues. So think of them first. And lastly, pharmacists have a wealth of information that they can share with you, whether it's websites for more information, manufacturer information, all kind of things. So like I say, it's just sort of a general plug to think of calling your pharmacist if it's a drug related question or issue or an insurance issue. That's really, I would say, the areas where we can be really helpful to you and to your child. The next thing I'm going to cover are some things that can help you navigate pharmacy and make it easier for you when you do need to get things for your child. The first thing I'll tell you, and it sounds trite, but introduce yourself. Pharmacists see a lot of people. As the slide shows you here, the average pharmacy in the United States fills 1,100 prescriptions a week. There are many, many of them that are doing 5,000 and 6,000 a week. It's a lot of customers. It's really helpful if they know you, they know your child, they have a personal connection to you. And I'll just put in this little plug all across healthcare care. I'm sure you've run into it with your child. People are swamped. There is just so much going on with COVID, this time of year, flu shots, a little bit of kindness at the pharmacy counter, a little bit of patience with it. And again, introduce yourself. Don't be just one of the names that in the crowd. Even if your child isn't currently on medication and you just need to go in and pick up some Tylenol, still not a bad idea. Go by the pharmacy, just let them know you may have these needs, that your child has Rett syndrome. Many of them may not even know what that is. Take the chance to tell them, educate them. October is the perfect time to do that. Also, please carry your insurance card. Many of the pharmacy systems these days can electronically look you up or your child up. But if it's your first time visiting a pharmacy, if you have your insurance card, you can assure that you aren't going to need to make multiple trips for insurance reasons. So bring your card. Third thing, if your child has a drug allergy or any diagnosis information, be sure it's current in the pharmacy's computer system. If we don't know your child is allergic to, say, amoxicillin, we're not going to screen for that. And we may inadvertently dispense a medication that may not be in your child's best interest. So even though that information may be on file with your doctor, please be sure your pharmacist has it as well. The next thing, most pharmacies offer a plethora of services they'd like you to take advantage of. One that I really would encourage you to do, if your child's on a maintenance medication that they take on a routine basis, and your pharmacist says, can I automatically refill that for you? Please say yes. It allows the pharmacist to pre-order the medication if it's an unusual one. It lets them monitor the need for your physician being contacted to approve more refills. There's just a lot of things that can make your efforts easier, because hopefully if we can do all that in advance for you, you can make one trip to the pharmacy and not get there and discover the medicine doesn't have refills, or get there and find out that the drug's not in stock. So automatic refills, I would really encourage you to let your pharmacy do that for you. Also, a lot of pharmacies offer, if your insurance allows, to automatically set it up so that any prescription that's maintenance is filled in 90-day increments, regardless. Your doctor may write for 30 days with 6 refills. If you've allowed your pharmacy to make the 90-day preference for you and your insurance allows it, they'll automatically do 90 days, which saves you 2 trips to the pharmacy. Most pharmacies these days can do mail delivery, which can be huge. I'd suggest you do that. Text messaging is a big plus for everybody, because then if the pharmacist does need to get in touch with you, say for instance, your child is out of refills on a medication and you've said you want to pick it up on Tuesday, but on Tuesday, I know it's not going to be ready. Most systems would automatically text you if you've opted in for text messaging. So please do that. And lastly, many pharmacies will offer what's called prescription synchronization. What that means is, say your child is on 3 or 4 medications and you're finding yourself back and forth to the pharmacy all the time. Ask them to sync them up for you. Sometimes it's a little bit of a rocky start to that. You might have a month or 2 where you go, what the heck is going on? But they will get it done for you, and that can save you trips. So those are some of my pharmacy tips. I'm going to now, there's also 2 kinds of pharmacy that you may or may not have had a reason to come into contact with. One is specialty pharmacy. Your insurance company is going to really be the person or the entity that decides if you're going to know about specialty pharmacy. Really expensive medications or medications that are restricted as far as their distribution will go to specialty pharmacy. If your child is prescribed one of those types of drugs, your doctor will send the prescription to the pharmacy. When the pharmacy tries to bill it, the insurance company will send back a message that says, this is through a specialty pharmacy, and this is the one you have to use because of your insurance. So that's kind of a small niche pharmacy, but in case you ever hear the term specialty pharmacy, you'll have a little bit of an idea what they're talking about. The other type of pharmacy that is really, I think, of a lot of value to a lot of parents is compounding pharmacy. And we're very fortunate to have Brian Stell here to talk to you about that today. Brian has been I'll let him tell, but he's been a compounding pharmacist for a long time and can offer information and tips about it. Brian, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Tips
All
about
right.
with your compounding pharmacy.
All right. Well, thank you for having me today. I appreciate that. My name is Brian Stell. I am a compounding pharmacist. I'm located just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been practicing for 34 years, so like Belinda, we've got a lot of experience here. So I have my doctorate degree. So I've been in school, like Belinda said, spent like 8 years in school. But what took me in a different direction is that I was very passionate about making medications that are not commercially available. So let's say if you go to a CVS or you go to a Walmart pharmacy, doctor's giving you a prescription. And there's a lot of parts in play that go when you fill a prescription. But essentially, the pharmacist or the technician will go grab a bottle that is commercially available that you have bought from a certified vendor or a drug company, and will dispense it, the medication, to you. Okay, there are times that a prescription is needed because of the challenges that we have out there. And a lot of times doctors will try matching a drug to a patient. And so you're given a smaller window of different opportunities that we can do that. It may not be something that you particularly need or your child needs. And so that's where a compounding pharmacist comes in. We work with the active ingredient of a medication. We can use just Tylenol or acetaminophen for an example. Your child or whoever the patient is may need a smaller strength, or they're having a challenge of getting the patient to take the medication, or they need a different dosage form, whether it be a topical dosage form, a different suspension, a flavoring issue, if one of the ingredients that there's an allergy to the patient. So there's things that a compounding pharmacist can take away from. So instead of matching the drug to the patient, we try to match the patient and their unique needs to the drug. So that's where compounding will come in. At that point, it may take a little bit longer to get the medication compounded because it's more laborious to be able to do that. We've got to spend anywhere from an hour to 2 hours to formulate the drug. We partner with a doctor, and the doctor a lot of times, next month the dosage may go up by a couple of milligrams. Well, I have the capability to make that medication go up just 2 milligrams as the child gets older or something like that. And the regular retail pharmacist can't do that. So it's very beneficial. The patient is getting exactly what the doctor wants them to have at the exact dosage and the exact dosage form. So it's very kind of a unique. This was the way pharmacy was pretty much done 100 years ago, when they would write prescriptions and the pharmacist would actually have to mix all the things together and then put it in a tablet press or a capsule and then dispense it to the patient. So a lot of things were compounded, but nowadays it's not as popular as it once was, but it's still very, very much needed. And for myself, I'm just extremely passionate about what I do. Usually when a parent or a patient reaches our doorsteps, they've exhausted all other means of getting the medication. They have tried various different pharmacies, and by the time they get to us, they're really frustrated sometimes because they've gone to 6 different pharmacies and nobody has let them know that, hey, this is something that's going to require some special attention. And hopefully the physician will know exactly where to locate a compounding pharmacy that will be able to address the need, and you can go from there. I think on the bottom of my slide, I put a good reference point on there. It's PCCARX.com. If you ever are going to be told that you need to have something compounded, this is an excellent site to go to. And they have a number of pharmacies, not only in the United States, but across the world, that are licensed to be a PCA accredited pharmacy. There's other pharmacies out there that are not accredited through PCCA. I would encourage you to try to locate one, because we're the ones that have kind of gone the extra mile, that just don't do it as a secondary thing, just throw together a couple of active ingredients or whatever. We really take the time and ensure that you're getting the right exact dosage. And but there's a website, so wherever you live throughout the United States or throughout the world, you can go there and locate a PCCA pharmacy. And that's going to be probably one of the best resources, if the need arises, that you can go to. Now, one of the things about compounding a medication, because it's not a typical drug that you would go into a pharmacy and bill insurance, we don't work with NDC numbers, which is a national drug code. Those are every drug that you walk into a CVS or Walmart or wherever you go, they are able to bill an insurance. They can scan in, and a national drug code pops up, and it will populate all the fields, and the copay or whatever has already been negotiated. So, and then you come out with a $5 copay, let's say. In compounding, I work with the pure active ingredient. So if I'm working, like I said earlier, with acetaminophen or Tylenol, I'm using that, which does not, because I'm formulating a new dose. That's something that I can't bill for. So we have to collect or get paid for that up front. Now, I'll speak for myself and the compounding pharmacy I'm with. We'll do anything to help get you reimbursed your money. So we can do a universal claim form that you can submit if the insurance company or whatever needs to reach back out to us. We're available to address those, because we, first and foremost, we want your child or the patient to handle all whatever's thrown at them and whatever condition is. We want them well, first and foremost. Money for me is secondary, but we will go to the extra length to get you reimbursed for the medication. If we have to place a call to the insurance company, I mean, hopefully it's not a real expensive, but that's one of the challenges that we run across, because we'll have the active and then several different fillers that we use, or suspending agents, this type of thing that we have to utilize, and we can't bill for all those different ingredients. So that's one of the things that is a challenge, but we always work really close with the patient to get the child what they need. Shelf life of compounded medications are usually shorter, because we have to use different agents, and when you combine them together, the federal government says that you can only have, it's called a beyond use date. So we can't extend that. We're given guidelines depending on what type of medication it is and how we're going to make that dosage form. It can be anywhere from 30 days to 180 days. So that's one of the good things. You know, if it's a month supply, then, you know, the beyond use date will be 30 days. But that's the biggest challenge. And typically, you know, if something is phoned in to me today for a compound, I can't promise you that I'll have it tomorrow. It may be the following day, but that doesn't mean that we're not really, you know, trying to exhaust all measures. And I stay late many nights to get things out that I've promised. And when you align yourself with a good compounding pharmacy, these pharmacists want nothing more than everyone to get well and feel better and take care of, manage symptoms, and that's what we're here for. I'm passionate about what I do, and I think that when someone goes into the different areas or fields of pharmacy, they're very passionate, and that's all that we want, to make patients' symptoms get better. So I think that that's all that I have. And if you have any questions, you can certainly type in a question, and I'll be glad to address it at the end of the presentation. Thank you for inviting me, and if anything I can do, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So the next section of my presentation, it really just deals with some common questions that we often get in pharmacy. And Brian, please feel free to join in, make any additional comments that you'd like. He's seen my slides, but he hasn't heard everything. So please just jump right in.
I will. Thank you.
So the first question that comes up a lot is, what's the difference in a brand name product and a generic product? Briefly, when a new drug entity comes onto the market, it is given a period of exclusivity where only the originating manufacturer can make that brand name product. In the United States, the Federal Drug Administration is responsible for approving all new drugs. They have a whole series of things that are required, beginning with just the chemistry of the product, how they're going to manufacture it. A drug manufacturer will have to submit information in the form of a new drug application that will talk about their manufacturing process, how they intend to go forward with testing, how they're going to label it. Once their initial submission is okayed, they can then go into animal studies. If things go well and it progresses, it goes into human clinical trials. Some of you are probably involved with those with your children, or have been involved with those. Once a drug company has gotten enough clinical data, they are ready to go in for their final approval, labeling, inspections, things of that nature. Along the way, during those clinical trials, the drug company is having to show what's called bioavailability, which means when a patient takes this tablet or a dose of this liquid, their body absorbs it. It then is distributed throughout their body to the right receptors for the drug to be active. And they have to show how much of the drug is needed for the desired effect to be achieved. So that's bioavailability. All that goes in as part of a new drug application and approval process for a brand name drug. So they're called the originator company. And as I said before, they have exclusivity, which can be anywhere, honestly, anywhere from a couple of years to 15 years. At the end of their exclusivity period, generic manufacturers come into play. And if the drug is widely used, say, many of you may be familiar with a drug called Lamictal or lamotrigine. There's a gazillion examples. If it's a widely used drug, a lot of generic companies will then submit what's called an abbreviated new drug application. That is different than the new drug application because the drug's already been widely used in humans, so they're not having to do any clinical studies to get their approval. They're not having, of course, to do any animal studies. They're not, there's a lot of things that make it much more economical for a generic company to put a product on the market. They haven't done any research or testing. They do have to prove that they can manufacture the drug safely. They have to have procedures in place for testing their final product to be sure that, yes, the tablet dissolves like we said it would, or yes, the liquid's stable for 3 years like the label says. They have to have their label approved. They have to agree to be inspected by the FDA, and they have to prove what's called bioequivalence. That means their product has to conform to the brand name as far as, does it dissolve correctly? Is it absorbed in an amount that will be effective. So that's under the heading of bioequivalence. My generic drug works the same as your brand name drug as far as getting into your body and achieving a blood level. Keep in mind, a generic drug does not have to be identical to the brand name. It may have different fillers. It may have a different type of coating. It still dissolve the same, but it might be chemically slightly different. It may have a different coloring in it because they're not required to look alike. It may have a different flavor if it's a liquid. So there are some variables. A recent study, a large-scale study, found that between the originator brand name and a generic, there was about a 3.5% difference in the drug in the body overall when they compared them. But keep in mind, they said that is very similar to the differences that you can find from one batch to the next of a brand name. So the FDA has definitely improved their testing of generics and I think tightened the requirements. When there is a very narrow therapeutic window, like for example, if any of your children or if you're familiar with thyroid medication, levothyroxine, which is sort of the basics for treating thyroid, comes in, I think, 8 different strengths or 9. There's a lot of precision in trying to dose that drug. So that in those drugs, a small percentage variable can be significant. In other drugs, a dosage range covers people from, say, 80 pounds to 300. So there's not a very discrete difference in dosing, but just be aware about that. I want to go on and talk about some people have taken a brand for a while and then a generic comes out and they get the generic, and for whatever the reason, do not feel that that generic works as well for them. Despite what the FDA may say, for whatever reason, they're just not comfortable or don't feel as good on it. If you feel like your child has not done as well on a generic as they used to do on the brand name, what your first step is, talk to their doctor and have them write "do not substitute" on the face of the prescription. If you happen to get a written prescription, which is getting rarer and rarer, you'll see a checkbox in most states in the US where a doctor can check "do not substitute." So let's say you want your child to take brand name Keppra instead of levocetirizine. The doctor would write it for the brand name Keppra, and they would check "do not substitute." When that happens, or when they send it in electronically with that notation, by law, a pharmacist is required to dispense the brand name. The one fly in the ointment is your insurance company may or may not honor that and pay for it. But it's something that does come up from time to time. And if your insurance does not automatically honor the doctor's request for the brand name only, sometimes an authorization is possible if the doctor has a way to document why the brand name is different. So that's just one thing to keep in mind on brand and generics. If you have any questions about it, type it into the Q&A, but in a nutshell, that's kind of the brand versus generic issue. Brian, you have anything or okay on that? Okay, we'll go to our next topic. Oral medication administration tips. I know there are lots of challenges out there. Your child may have a significant drooling issue, which makes oral medicating hard. They may have an automatic tendency to want to chew a tablet instead of swallow the tablet, or may just not be able to swallow them or be comfortable with them. So I've put together, with the help of a publication, the American Society of Health System Pharmacists, that goes over some good ways and tips for administering oral medications. The first one has to do with being helpful for kids who may spit medicine out, who may have a drooling issue. There, if you haven't seen them before, there's a little thing you can get at your pharmacy. They usually have them behind the pharmacy counter, and I don't know anybody that charges you for them. It's called an oral dosing syringe. They come anywhere from usually about 10 milliliters, which is 2 teaspoons full, down to 1 milliliter if it's a very small dose. If it's a liquid medicine, it's pretty easy. You need to shake it up or whatever, you do that first. You draw it into the oral syringe, and then you squirt it to the back of your child's cheek. If it's an oral medication that can be dissolved, and we'll go into that in a few minutes, you can dissolve it in some water and again, squirt it into the back of your child's mouth. If your child has an issue with drooling a lot, so it makes it very hard to know if the medicine's in there or how much of it's going down, I bet there are a lot of answers on the Rett forum where parents have a lot of practical ideas for you. My suggestion is very, very simple one. Get a soft, clean cloth, dry your child's mouth as much as you can, and then immediately squirt that medicine in the back part of their cheek. Hopefully that's going to make it go down a little easier and a little quicker, and it's not going to be spit out or drooled out. So the next one, and this is something that can happen at a retail pharmacy. My advice to you, if you think this next tip is helpful to you, find a pharmacy that you can talk to the pharmacist, that they're not doing so much business that their head is always down and you can't get their attention. But most pharmacists, for a standard liquid medication, can add some special flavoring. They may charge you a little bit for it, but if it's the difference in your child taking the medicine or not, it might be a good $5 to spend. And certainly in compounding pharmacy, if say your child has multiple medications that could be put into the same compound or whatever the case may be, flavoring is something they can be experts at in helping you. The third thing, and again, this applies to a liquid medication, cold medicine doesn't taste as bad as warm medicine. You can think of a lot of examples. Just if you take cheese right out of the refrigerator and eat it, it isn't nearly as flavorful as if you let it sit and come to room temperature. Just like cheese, medicines that are room temperature is going to have a more pronounced flavor than things that are refrigerated. If your child's on a liquid medication and they don't really love the taste of it or they react negatively to the taste, check with your pharmacist and be sure there's no hazard in refrigerating the medicine. And if there's not, try chilling it. It will diminish the flavor. Another tip, and again, a lot of these apply to liquids, but mix the liquid with a teaspoonful of formula. If your child does still take formula of some kind, you could then squirt that combo back into their mouth, or if they're able to, they could suck on the syringe. You don't want to use a large amount of formula because you want to be sure that there's such a small amount your child will take all of it. So if you're giving a teaspoonful of medicine, try putting it in with a teaspoonful of formula or another beverage a child likes. Some people are very successful masking unpleasant liquids with things like Dr. Pepper, which is a very strong flavored soda. But again, it's a great idea. Just kind of check with your pharmacist before you do that and be sure that it's a medicine that it won't be impacted negatively by mixing it. Next tip, change the way the medicine looks. If your child just does not like swallowing a tablet or isn't able to, if the medicine can be crushed, it could be mixed with yogurt or applesauce or pudding. Sometimes that can be a solution. Again, check with your pharmacist. Some issues could be that the medicine shouldn't be crushed or chewed, or it could be that it's a very bitter pill and putting it in something like that may not be helpful. But is good for a lot of things. And a lot of capsules can be opened and the contents mixed. So that's something to do. And another one, if a medicine can't be mixed with liquid, just be sure to have your child's favorite drink on hand. Then small dose of yucky tasting medicine followed up by something they really like to drink can kind of quickly make that go away. And all of these things, kind of to think about the way taste buds are arranged on your tongue. You can pretty much bypass taste buds by going inside of the mouth, like we talked about in the first one, or as far back in the mouth as possible, where there are fewer taste receptors. So hopefully some of those tips will be helpful for you. And again, for specific medications, you might want to check with your pharmacist. They can advise you a little bit on all of that. The next thing we're going to cover is some tips for giving drugs via the G-tube. And again, I'd really say if you're having issues with G-tube administration, we have a wealth of information in the Rett forums of parents who have dealt with the same issues and may have some really practical advice for you. These are some general guidelines. The best thing you can do to prevent a G-tube from getting clogged is keeping it clean. Always flush it with water before and after every use. 5 to 10 milliliter if you're using a G-tube. I know you have a variety of sizes of syringes available to you, probably. So be sure, and before every feeding and before every dose of medicine, flush the tube. Again, after that, flush the tube. If the more completely dissolved a medication is, the better it's going to be for administration in a G-tube. There's some capsules that have little pellets in them. Many of you may have run into those. Those pellets can really kind of clog things up. So you want to be sure you shake it, the syringe real well, that the beads aren't stuck on the plunger. The more you can do to think, just things like that, the better. And again, flushing the system before and after is great. For medications that are really oily, washing the tubing after use with soap and warm water is essential. So there's certainly some seizure medications that fall into that category. And I looked online to try to come up with some resources, and it said your Rett forum may be your best one, but there's a very good article on giving medicines through feeding tube on St. Jude's site. So it's there on the bottom, stjude.org. If despite your best efforts of flushing and washing the tube, it does become plugged, your first step is try to just sort of with the pulsing action and some warm water, see if that will open the tubing back up and make the in the connector. If that doesn't work, try a carbonated beverage like a 7-Up or a ginger ale, something that has some fizz to it. Sometimes that can do it with that same kind of flushing action. And the more dramatic one is a combination of sodium bicarbonate tablets, which you can buy without a prescription at a pharmacy, and a pancreatic enzyme capsule. Those do require a prescription. So you would talk to your child's doctor, get the prescription. Tends to be, most pancreatic enzymes are covered by insurance. You want to be sure you get a capsule form. You won't need very many of them, but you're going to open, if that happens, you're going to open the capsule, put the contents, and crush it along with the sodium bicarb, add some water, put that through the syringe into the G-tube, allow it to sit for about 30 minutes. After that time, then you try to flush it again. And another good site, if you want tips, is a website aboutkidshealth.ca. It had a lot of information on what to do if the tube gets blocked. And kind of a silly warning about the pancreatic one. You don't want that to get in your eyes or your child's eyes, which I can't imagine that happening, but just, you never know, so be aware. And again, the Rett forum is probably full of parents who have had very practical experience and could offer a lot of tips on that. We've talked a lot about crushing tablets to be able to dissolve them and make them taste better, hide them in foods. But now I'm going to go over different types of dosage forms and which ones can be crushed or opened or chewed. And again, if you find your child is taking a medication in one of these categories that we say, oh, whatever you do, don't crush it. That's when a compounding pharmacy would really be a big help for you, because they can take care of things like that and make stable preparations that you can't mimic at home or your retail pharmacy can't do for you. So the first thing we're going to talk about are uncoated tablets. There you're just run of the mill, excuse me, run of the mill. If your children take lorazepam for anxiety, those are uncoated tablets. You look at them and they just look sort of like an aspirin, plain old aspirin tablet. They don't have much coating on them. They may have a film, but it's not shiny or hard. Pardon me, that's an uncoated tablet. And ask your pharmacist to clarify that. They can be split, they can be crushed, they can be chewed for the most part. Excuse me, 1 minute. The biggest problem you can run into on crushing these, then the medicine may be bitter. But that, for the most part, an uncoated, sort of regular looking tablet is fine to split. It's fine to dissolve it. It's fine to crush it or chew it. Excuse me. The next category is a tablet that's called Enteric Coded. Then again, you can check with your pharmacist to see if the drug is Enteric Coded. They usually have a shinier surface, almost like an M&M. They sort of tend to have that look about them. They should not be split unless the tablet has clearly got a hash mark score on it for you to split it on it. I am so sorry. The reason they shouldn't be dissolved or split or crushed, that coating serves the purpose of ensuring that the drug dissolves in the correct portion of the GI system. So it may bypass the stomach. That coating may protect it from the stomach acid so that it's only dissolved once it gets in the intestine where the drug will be correctly absorbed. So destroying the coating on an enteric coated tablet, which you would do if you crushed it or tried to dissolve it, you're most probably going to have a pretty significant impact on whether the drug will work correctly for your child. So be sure and check if it's a tablet, find out if it's an uncoated tablet or an enteric coated, and go accordingly. The third type of tablet is called an extended release tablet. Sometimes the name will clue you in because it will have things after it like CR for controlled release or ER for extended release. It'll have some of that. That's not universally the case. So again, I would check with the pharmacist and be sure your child isn't on an extended release tablets. Another sort of way to know if it's extended release, most extended release tablets are only taken once or at the most twice a day. So that can sometimes clue you in, but just double check it. They should never be crushed. They should never be chewed. That will destroy the extended release property. And instead of your child slowly getting a dose over 24 hours, they'll get all of it, bam, right away, which can lead to very serious side effects. So be sure you do not crush or your child does not chew an extended release tablet. Some extended release tablets are scored. They have, that little hash mark on them. If that's the case, it's fine to break them in half, but no more than that. And in just a general aside, if you are splitting a tablet, be sure you use a pill splitter, and they look like a little guillotine with a razor blade in them. You can buy them at pharmacies. They're about anywhere from $5 to $10. Other than, don't split a lot of tablets ahead. It's real tempting to, you need a month's worth of dosing, so you're just sitting there and you're going to cut them all. Once you've cut into that tablet, it can absorb moisture out of the air, and you may over time, it's just a better idea to split them when you need them. So that's it on tablets. And other than, there's a form called a buccal tablet or a sublingual tablet. Those are ones you put under your child's tongue or let dissolve on top of their tongue. It's best if you can to administer them that way. If you grind them up, or it can change how the drug is absorbed. And if you ever look under your tongue, there's a lot of blood vessels under there. A sublingual tablet that's put under the tongue is absorbed very, very quickly. They dissolve very quickly too. So you want to have dry hands when you handle them. Then when you get to capsules, most capsules can be opened and the contents dissolved. Again, check with your pharmacist about that to be sure there's not an exception for some reason with the one your child is on. But if you're on an extended release capsule, and there are a lot of those, omeprazole, a lot of seizure meds, sometimes when you open the capsule and pour it out, you get a lot of little pellets. Don't crush the pellets. That's a form, that's one way of making a medication extended release. So like we talked before with the extended release tablets, if you crush those pellets to dissolve them in liquid, say, what's going to happen is that dose isn't going to be slowly released. Those pellets aren't going to gradually dissolve in your child's system. You're going to release all of the medication at once. So be very cautious about that. And on any capsule, if you have any question, ask your pharmacist. One thing I didn't put on the slide, but in thinking about it, to probably talk about it, are patches. I don't know, your child could be prescribed perhaps estrogen in a patch or a pain medication in a patch. With patch medications, you apply them to clean, dry skin. You put them in a location where you'll see them regularly, be sure they're in place. In some of the patches, the medicine's actually in the glue that's on the patch. So be sure the entire patch is in contact with skin. You don't want to have a medication patch covered by a heating blanket or a heating pad, because it softens up, the way to look at it, it sort of softens up that glue, and the drug is absorbed much, much too quickly. So if your child, for a reason, gets prescribed a patch, read all the instructions you're going to get with that and talk to your pharmacist. But those are some of the big things. No exposure to excessive heat. That would include hot tubs, a sauna, a spa, something like that, or just a heating pad. But be careful about that. And again, sometimes the best thing to do if your child is exposed or is prescribed a patches, you think they haven't gotten all of it. When do you decide to re-give that dose, or when do you decide to not? There's some general rules of thumb for missed dosages. If you miss giving a dose, say it's scheduled in the morning at 7 a.m., but now it's 8:30. Do you still give it? Yes. If it's been less than 2 hours, go ahead and give it. If it's been more than 2 hours, it depends. The medication's given once a day or even twice a day, go ahead. So you say it was scheduled at 8 a.m., but now here it's 11:30. But they only take that drug one time a day. Go ahead and give it. But let's say that same scenario, it was scheduled at 8, now it's 11:30, and their next dose is due at 1 o'clock. You don't want to give it at 11:30 and again at 1 o'clock. At that point, you sort of skip it. Maybe you ease the other dose forward a little bit. Instead of giving it at 1, give it at noon. But a lot of it, it's going to vary with every situation. But the rule of thumb, again, less than 2 hours, give it for sure. More than 2 hours, think about when the next dosage is due. If it's a once a day dose or a twice a day dose, go ahead and give it. But if the next dosing interval is coming up pretty quickly, skip ahead to that next one. And like I say, you can cheat back a little bit, maybe give it an hour sooner than you would normally. This does not apply to insulin. If you have a child who uses insulin and they miss a dose, of course, your first thing is to check blood sugar, and hopefully you'll have a short-acting insulin on hand that you can give, or it will let you know on a sliding scale how much to give. But for oral medications, the 2 hour is sort of a rule of thumb. Now, suboptimal doses, which is probably happens more often than a missed dose. Let's say your child throws up after you give them medicine, or they spit it out. When do you re-give it and when do you don't re-give it? If it's been less than 30 minutes, you probably want to re-give it. Drugs are absorbed pretty quickly. So if it's gotten out of your child's mouth and beyond their throat, which means you're not spitting it out, but throwing up, it doesn't take long for that drug to be absorbed and into the body. So 30 minutes is sort of the end of the window of when you would re-give an oral dose if a child vomits. Certainly, drooling is a little bit different issue we talked about before. If they immediately drool it back out, yes, re-give it. If it's more than 30 minutes, you don't want to re-give it because it's most likely totally been absorbed by then, and it would actually, you'd be doing a double dose. Again, I would go on and chat with your pharmacist or look on Rett form, you'll get some advice. So next one, traveling with meds. I realized I thought I'd be through with everything in 15 minutes and I'm long-winded, so we're going to speed this up a little bit. So traveling with meds, there's a lot of information on the slide. You can read it over. The biggest tips: keep drugs in their original containers. Don't combine drugs. Don't store them in your, if you're on a car trip, don't put them in the glove compartment. Don't put them in the trunk. If you're going on any kind of commercial carrier, keep the medicine with you. And bring a list of all the meds with generic and brand name. Have the phone numbers you need. Have your doctor's number, have your pharmacist's number. If you're traveling internationally, be sure if you're trying to fill it in another country that you talk to the pharmacist there about the generic name of the drug and why your child, just as a safeguard, why your child is taking it. When you are traveling, big issue is dosing intervals. Before you go, set up a timer in your phone. If your child takes a medicine every 8 hours, have a recurring timer every 8 hours so you're not worrying with time zone shifts. You're keeping the hour interval the same. I'll leave this up just a second. I imagine everybody had a time to look it over, but just in case. Next topic is one that's garnered more and more interest, at least if I can judge from the questions I'm asked at work. And that's the role of CBD, THC, and supplements. Again, I think this presentation will be out there. There's some websites that I've referred to. So if you're interested in more information, you can look it up. Cbd and Thc research has gone on for a long, it's been used for years. I mean, literally since the Stone Age, there's records of cannabis being used. But it wasn't until the 1990s that scientists discovered what are called cannabinoid receptors in the human brain. That means, from a practical point of view, your body has different neurological receptors that react to components of cannabis. And your body produces chemicals that are similar to some of the components of cannabis. There is a wealth of information online, some of it probably less reliable than others, which is often the case. Two websites that I think are excellent to provide you with information on research that's going on is one that's from this UC Center for Medical Cannabis Research. It's associated with the University of California in San Diego. Excellent website. It's there on the slide. It's the cmcr-ucsd.edu. They really are considered to be in the forefront. Another one that has a lot of articles, but it's not medically based. It's more just informational articles. So when you read them, if there's references, I'd go a little deeper, but it does have a lot of information, and it's called echoconnection.org. A lot of information out there. So that's just a general one. I want to go into one quick thing here. CBD laws are all over the place, both in the United States and outside the United States. So if you are interested about the state laws where you live in the US anyway, there is a website listed here, and it goes through state by state of what's allowed and what's legal. Certainly you can order over the internet and get things that may not be sold in your home state. If you're going to do that, my next slide is going to have some tips for being an informed consumer on behalf of your child for CBD or THC products. Okay, any reputable CBD product is going to show that it has a certificate of analysis or a COA. That means a third party not related to the company that's manufacturing or marketing the product has checked the product for impurities, say pesticides that may have been used when the plants were grown. They'll also look at the CBD and THC ratio to see if it conforms with the package labeling. So you always want to look for a COA. Many products will have a QR code that will link you to their COA and will tell you what company did that analysis for them. If it's not on the package, I would really say go to the website. If you are at a medical marijuana or even a recreational marijuana store, those retailers may have the COA information. Your average pharmacy is not going to have that, to my experience anyway. So websites, packaging are your best places to be sure your product has a certificate of analysis. They say they're looking for accuracy of labeling. They're looking for the combination of CBD and THC, and they're looking for any additional chemicals that may be showing up in their product, which can be critical. It could be heavy metals from pesticide. It could be any number of things. So that's a really good thing to be aware of. Another thing that's challenging is, how do you know what you're buying when you buy CBD products? On their label, there's not any FDA in the United States, FDA required labeling yet. So consequently, it's sort of consumer be aware, not beware, but be aware. Some of the products will list the total amount of CBD in the entire package. So let's say, the example I used here, the bottle is 50 milliliters. It'll tell you on the package size, 50 milliliters. And it says contains 2,000 milligrams per bottle. Well, that's per 50 milliliter. You do your math and you come up, oh, so every milliliter I give with this dropper is going to have 40 milligrams of CBD in it. Likewise, on a package of gummies, perhaps in big letters says 300 milligrams, but there's say 100 of them in the bottle, or there's 30 of them. You have to do your math and find out how much CBD you're getting. Is the package labeled for total package content, or is it labeled per dose? Real one to be aware of. And keep in mind, there are no official dosing guidelines for CBD. A general rule is 1 to 6 milligrams per 10 pounds of body weight. So it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science. If you're going to try CBD and THC, start low, gradually increase it, and be very aware of the product you're purchasing. What is the actual strength? And if you change products, say your child's really done well on a blueberry gummy, and the next time you go to buy it, it's not there, be really careful about how you compare those two products. Practical tip, don't throw away that old bottle until you're sure your new bottle is in hand and you can compare them. I'm going to go on to talk about using supplements. I guess the biggest thing I'd like to convey to you, supplements can interact with prescription medications. They can interact with one another. Supplements are regulated differently by the FDA. So there aren't nearly the stringent requirements for a supplement to be on the market as there is for a prescription drug to be. Be sure you're buying from a reputable source. If you get information and it's a supplement with unbelievable claims, it's going to stop seizures, your child's never going to have another anxiety after the wilder the claim, the less likely you're getting a legit product. So just use common sense. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Like I say, those products are not regulated with near the requirement of proof of efficacy. A supplement that's labeled correctly in the United States will only say the name of the supplement. Most of them don't have exact dosing. Some of them do, but they're not going to say product ABC will cure blah, blah, blah. They can't claim that. So be cautious, is I guess the word with supplements. Now, hopefully, if there's any questions or answers, hopefully Brian and I can give those or can write them down and provide them back to you. But if there's any questions, now would be a good time. And thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you so much, Belinda. That was quite a lot of information. I don't think that the majority of our audience had a full appreciation for how much information, knowledge, advice, guidance a pharmacist can provide. And thank you for answering so many questions that we see regularly in the forums and that families ask, especially as they are getting prescriptions from different specialists. A GI doctor might prescribe one thing, your neurologist might prescribe another, and your pediatrician might prescribe another. As you mentioned, a pharmacist is a great person to kind of give that extra validation that all those different medications on top of any supplements that you might be purchasing over the counter for sleep aid or whatever supplement you might be taking, that you are, that a pharmacist is available to see how those interact with each other, see if they can be combined and dissolved and crushed and all of those things. And particularly of value was your advice on what to do if some of the medication is ruled out and how often it can be readministered. You covered a lot of territory in this time.
I hope it was helpful, or at least made you think of your pharmacist as someone who could answer some questions for you.
Yes, and I really like the advice of find a pharmacy in your area that might not have as much foot traffic as the one that's the most convenient to you, because you're more likely to be able to get some time in advice.
That's very true.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to invite everybody who is on the line with us. If you have any questions for Belinda or Brian, please type them into the question field now. We have a few minutes before we'll wrap up for today. As you're thinking about your questions, I'm going to give you a minute to type them in. I will remind you that we are recording the presentation and we will be posting it onto our YouTube channel, so that if you want to rewatch or share it with somebody in your community who wasn't able to join us today, that'll be available to you. Okay, I have in the queue one question, and this, Belinda, you could start with an answer, and Brian, if you're still with us on the line, you
I
can.
am.
And someone asked if you could revisit what kinds of medications can be compounded. So I've got two parents, one whose child is on 3 different seizure medications. I'm not sure if their goal is to see if they can be combined into one medication, minimizing the number of medications to give, or if they just need it in a different format, but that's one question. And then another question is from a parent whose child requires heart medication, and they already use the services of a compounding pharmacy, but it seems to be a constant struggle because it needs to be formulated as a liquid every 2 weeks. And they were looking for some specific advice. So if you don't mind, I'll leave those 2 questions for you to answer.
Well, I can certainly address the going every 2 weeks or something. Right now, it's in Capitol Hill whether or not we can extend the beyond use dates. Right now, most liquid forms require every 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that's the stipulation that the government has said. We're hopefully by the next year going to be able to extend that, or they'll give us permission to extend it to a 30-day. We've just, people that are behind the scenes are actively lobbying for this to happen because there's a lot of studies proving that it can last much longer than a 2-week supply. It's just by law, if I put a expiration date of 2 months on there, and the government says it'll only be 2 weeks, we can get in trouble for that. And so that's unfortunate. Most of the time, I would tell you, I would give it to my grandchild beyond 2 weeks. That's just me speaking, because I've been doing this for so long. It could use it a little bit longer. But some pharmacists are very much sticklers, and they're going to follow it to the T. And they'll say, no, you got to come back every 2 weeks to get this. You're going to have a new prescription, or whatever the case may be. But that's the guideline that we're given. As far as the other ones, the parent that's got their child that's on 3 different seizure medications, that's something that a pharmacist would have to go in and look to make sure that there's no interactions between the 3. I don't know now if the parent gives all 3 of them at the same time, at different times during the same time. Chances are you could compound that into, again, the exact dosage and do it in one, just at one time. But that's something that we'd have to look at and do again, like was discussed earlier by Belinda, the bioequivalence, making sure that it's absorbed and that they're not competing. So that's what I'd have to say with that. I want it to be as easy as possible when I compound. I'm trying to help the parent to do, whatever the challenge is, to make it much more easier. So, yeah, I would certainly look into it before I just did blanket across, say, yes, it can be done. I'd have to know the 3 medications and make sure that it can be done and that your child will benefit from it.
Great. Thank you. Belinda, do you have anything to add?
No, Brian is definitely the expert.
Okay. I have another question about expiration dates. I think the most top line instance of this was what happened with Epipens in the last year, where there was an expiration date on Epipens and then there was a shortage of Epipens, and it came out that, well, you could actually use it for about 6 months later than the expiration date. Do you have any guidance, Belinda, that you can share about what an expiration or use by date is versus in the original packaging or once opened? So there are a lot of medications that are prescribed as needed
Yep.
for use as needed. So
A drug company guarantees their product to be 100% of the labeled amount still available up until that expiration date. When you go past that expiration date, they have not guaranteed. Some drugs will even begin to degrade a little bit after that. So it's a hard answer to give. My personal opinion is they aren't going to know. Day one, it's great. Say May 30th, it's great. And June 1st, it's nothing. That's not just a realistic thing that's going to happen to a drug product. Can I legally say, oh, keep using it, you'll be fine? No, I can't. Certainly an EpiPen that's a month out of date is a much better alternative than no EpiPen. So a lot of that is, say, legally the company that makes it have proven with testing that a product is 100% up until that date if it's stored like it should be. So there's not a hard fast rule that says, oh, 6 months after that's fine, a year after that's fine. You have to use common sense a little bit. If you've owned the product, let's say you've got that bottle of ibuprofen in the medicine cabinet and you hardly ever need it, and it went out of date 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't expect much from it. But if you have that same bottle of ibuprofen and it went out of date a month ago, I'd certainly personally take it. But that's what the expiration date is. The expiration date on the package is when the manufacturer has provided testing to show their product is still as good as it was on day one. That's in effect what it is. Sort of like the use by date on your sour cream.
thank you very much. I turned off my webcam because it slowed down my internet speed, but hopefully you can hear me. I've got one more question that's been submitted, which is, I think you touched on this earlier, but if you could give some advice on how to increase the supply of medication. So oftentimes our kids need to have an emergency supply at school, as well as the regular supply at home, and families are finding the window available for refills for Medicaid is getting smaller and smaller. So it's hard to have that extra dose or, an extra dose for travel in case it spills or something like that. Can you give some advice on how to help manage
it is
that?
a common problem, and I agree, it's becoming more of a problem in many instances. When your pharmacist is billing an insurance company, they have a couple of options electronically. Most insurance companies allow what are called submission clarification codes that the pharmacy puts in. They can be emergency supply, they could be vacation supply, they could be things like that will sometimes allow a claim for a medication to be paid even though you still have plenty on hand. That's occasional, that's one solution. Be sure you discuss it with the pharmacy and let them know why you need it. See if they can submit a clarification code to your insurance company. In the case of, say, your child takes anxiety medications and their doctor writes, take one tablet every 6 hours if needed for anxiety. Then the way a pharmacy would submit that, say the prescription was written for a quantity of 60. Her doctor or his doctors put every 6 hours, going to be taken 4 a day. We're going to tell the insurance company, this is going to last 15 days because at the most they're going to take 4 a day. Well, say in reality, your child only takes 2 a day because it's only when they need it. Still refill that prescription at that 15-day window. That'll give you an opportunity to stockpile a little bit of your as needed medications. So that's another way to get a few extra on hand. The thing I talked about earlier, signing up for automatic refills, when you do that, a pharmacy's insurance or computer system is going to start pinging your insurance on what they think is probably the first possible fill date. And they're going to fill that refill perhaps you're at home with the bottle and you look and go, wow, I still have 10 days of this. Why would I want to get this now? That's why your insurance company has agreed to pay it. Go ahead and fill it and pick it up. The reason I stress pick it up, the pickup date is what generates the clock for your insurance company. So let's say you get a call from the pharmacy on Monday and they say, I've got your child's prescription ready, and you go, oh, I got another 10 days, a week. I'm not going to hurry down there. Go ahead and hurry down there. What that means for you then is your insurance will pay it again more quickly for you because you picked it up that day, and they do that as your start date, not the date the pharmacist filled it, but the date you actually pick it up. So that's another way you can start slowly stockpiling. In the case of needing an extra supply for school, usually that's a PRN medication like an EpiPen or an anxiety med. So when a pharmacy bills an EpiPen for you, the insurance company may have a criteria that says, you know, so many pens per 30 days or so many pens per 10 days. Ask your pharmacist to find out what that window is and schedule that next refill for as soon as possible. That is the quickest, probably one of the easiest ways to get that done. If that barrier is still not allowing you to get a supply for the school, at that case, you may have to pay out of pocket. GoodRx is an excellent coupon or manufacturer discount clearinghouse. Go to GoodRx, look up the drug, see what it would cost out of pocket. If it's minimal, you may want to do that. If it is expensive and it doesn't make using, you know, paying out of pocket a reasonable solution, see if your physician can do an authorization call to your insurance and explain the situation to them. So those are sort of some of the options for trying to deal with that problem.
Thank you.
If I might add something real quick, like she said, that when a medication is filled, it is billed that day. So the clock is ticking, and if it's not picked up within a certain amount of time, by law, we've got to return it back to stock. And so then the insurance company charges us back for it. So if it's not picked up within, I think it's maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever. If it's not picked up, we're required to put it back because we've been reimbursed for it, and it's still sitting there. The patient has it. So it just cuts down time to be sure to pick up that medication so that it's cleared out and the transaction is completed at that point. So that way we don't have to go through the whole cycle again.
Well, and we're also, I agree with Brian, there is a legal timeline on when you have to put it back, but we're finding with some of the commercial insurance and certainly with the state Medicaid agencies, say I fill it on the 1st and you don't come get it until the 6th or 7th. They're saying, well, you didn't even have access to it till the 7th, so you couldn't have started taking it before the 7th. So now I'm going to say, your refill is available not on, let's say it was June 1st. It's not available July 1st because I know you didn't even pick it up till the 7th. So it's available now on June 5th. So we're seeing some transition, and that's more common with things like things that are controlled, like anxiety meds or sleep meds, pain medications. So be sure, like I say, the sooner you pick it up, the more you're allowing a little leeway with your insurance company. And the 14-day rule is sort of hard and fast. If you haven't picked it up legally, I have to put it back. Well, legally, by contract with your insurance carrier, we have to put it back.
Right.
And you refill, but that's another time you get to the pharmacy, you think the prescription's ready, but actually it was 15 days ago when it was filled. So now it's been put back and you're going to have to wait. So that's a very good point.
Thank you very much. I think these are really helpful suggestions, especially as we're facing winter and natural disasters, things that might keep you homebound and not able to get to your pharmacy when you plan to get to your pharmacy because of snow, hurricane, fire, whatever, power outages. Unfortunately, it's just becoming more of the norm. Better to be prepared than caught surprised and without a medication, that especially seizure medications or really necessary things that are required to build up in your system and take continuously. I have two more questions actually. So I'm not sure if you mentioned early in your slide about the dose for weight and why that's so important. So if your child you have a young child who's growing and they get taller, put weight on, or lose weight, how that can affect the strength and efficacy of a medication. And is that something a family could talk to you about, or should they go to their doctor if there's a sudden weight change?
My answer to that is I should definitely talk to the doctor about that. The doctor's the one who can write a new prescription that will take into account the dosing difference. Again, to prevent it from being an insurance issue, let's say you filled a 50 milligram tablet 2 weeks ago, and now the 50 milligram is not enough. Instead of being one tablet, needs to be 1.5 tablets. Your child's doctor needs to send a new prescription to the pharmacy with the new directions. What that does, it will usually increase the quantity that we fill the prescription for, and it will provide the information that's needed to let your insurance company know by way of that submission clarification code that I talked about, that there's been a drug therapy change. Often what we see in retail pharmacy anyway is we filled a prescription for a 30-day supply based on the fact that the doctor's written take one a day. Your child sees the doctor, they say, oh, that one tablet's not effective enough. Maybe they're still exhibiting symptoms. Maybe that's a weight gain, could be any number of things. So the doctor says to you, give them 1.5. And they don't really know what that's going to cause to happen at your pharmacy. What that's going to cause to happen at your pharmacy is you're going to come in early for that refill, because instead of giving 1 tablet a day, now you're giving 1.5 tablets or 2 tablets or whatever. We're going to bill the prescription we have, which says take 1 a day, and your insurance company is going to come back and say, oh, it's way too soon. Those should have lasted another 2 weeks. To avoid that, anytime the doctor says increase the dose, specifically ask them to send a new prescription to your pharmacy. They said they don't know the ins and outs of billing a pharmacy and what problems that creates. So please be your own advocate. Tell them to send a new prescription.
Great, thank you. And this is the final question, I promise. This is advice. Many parents have their children on their private insurance, and in the United States, insurance is dictated by your employer. So what would be your advice in terms of if parents are making decisions, employment decisions, it's time, we're approaching that time of year where you're looking at PPOs, HMOs, and whatnot. Could a pharmacist help advise on what insurance providers will cover what formularies, or is that something that a family should, before changing insurance plans, contact the insurance provider and ask for a formulary? And can you describe what a formulary is?
Yes, I can. A formulary, to start at the beginning, every insurance company has a list of medications they will cover and what the copay level is going to be. You're probably used to hearing the term tier 1 or tier 3. The higher the tier number, the higher the copay. So if you are looking at different plans, it's an excellent idea to go online to that insurance company's website and look. They will usually have their formulary. If you're with a large employer, there's often a dedicated page or a dedicated site for you to go to. It's definitely good to be proactive. If your child is on a medication and has been on it, it's doing great on it, and you go to that website or you call that 800 number to the insurance company and they say, we don't cover it, the first question is, how can I get an exception approved? And with the help of your doctor and your pharmacist, sometimes that can start before your coverage is actually effective. So you want to be sure that you know what's covered, what tier. Another thing, be aware when you're comparing pharmacy plans, How big is the deductible? Is it a family deductible or an individual deductible? Those can be really critical issues if you have a choice of plans. If you're on a state Medicaid program for your child, or perhaps your employer only offers one, it is an excellent idea to become familiar with that plan as it relates to your child. And the best way to do that, I say, is either the website of the insurance company or a direct phone call to their member service department. And during open enrollment, be sure you have plenty of time to have on that phone on hold, because you may have to wait a while to speak with someone, but certainly it's time well spent. Sometimes a pharmacist can give you a pretty good idea if they look at your child's med list and go, you know, all of this stuff is very routine and it's not expensive. There's nothing that's a red flag to me. You may rest pretty assured that you're going to be fine. An initial review of that med list can usually help a pharmacist foresee that there could be an issue for you. So talk to your pharmacist, but the real source for answers on that is the insurance company.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We are at the end of our time. I know that as people digest the information that you've shared today, more questions might come up. I encourage everyone to please feel free to email me or call me if you have additional questions and we can get them answered. Belinda and Brian, thank you so much for your commitment to your trade and your profession. You are absolutely a partner in this journey with our children. As I said at the beginning, I hope that most of this information will never be needed by you, but if it is, and if it does, and I know that we're all very much closely watching those clinical trials, and we hope that there'll be prescribables specifically for Rett syndrome that will be coming to market as well. You are your child's advocate. The more information that you know and the more educated you can become, the better quality of life your child will have, and an easier time of it that you'll have helping your child through their different medical issues. But always remember that your pharmacist is there. They're wonderful. Little holiday gift, a little thank you, a little kindness goes a long way. Belinda, Brian, especially.
What impact sending a holiday card with a picture of your child, it's shared by every member of the pharmacy team. You know, we appreciate the personal connection and the opportunity to serve. So don't underestimate what Paige is saying in this regard. Doesn't have to be a box of chocolate or a gift. Just hey, thanks for what you've done for us, and a picture goes. We're delighted to get them. Sincerely, we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give an update, how your child is responding to what we've done. I mean, that's such gratitude on our end. Know that what we're doing is making a difference in your family's life. That's the reward for us. So just that open line of communication goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you. And we do very much appreciate your work, especially now when you're doing a lot of COVID shots and managing flu shots and trying to juggle filling prescriptions and doing more work with less time, and you're gloved up, masked up, and behind plexiglass. It really helps us to know that you're real people, you care about our kids, and you're really there to help us answer these things that most of us were not trained in when we arrived to this journey with Rett syndrome with our child. So thank you very, very much. We wish you all the best, and we hope that you'll be able to join us again at another time. For our families, please pay attention during October Rett Syndrome Awareness Month. Take advantage of the materials that we're making available to you to make it easier for you to raise awareness in your communities, whether it's with your pharmacist, whether it's at your child's school, whether it's in your neighborhood. The more people who have a chance to meet your child, the more they'll fall in love with them and welcome them into being active members of our community and want to support you on your journey. It certainly helps. Thank you for joining us today. IRSF is continuously committed to helping you on this journey. If you have other topics that you would like to see on future RettEds, let me know. Our schedule is specifically driven by the questions that come from you on your journey. And there is no question that you would have that 1,000 other parents haven't had the same question. So please stay in contact with me. Celebrate October Awareness Month. There's a lot to celebrate with your kids. There's a lot of hope in the field of research. There's a lot of hope with pharmaceuticals and treatments that are coming that can really impact the health and development of your child. So don't be afraid of medications. Sometimes they can be our friend and they can really help. Just be informed of what you're doing, talk to your experts for advice, and be confident that we're all pulling for your kids. So thank you again very much. We'll get this recording up on our IRSF YouTube channel, and please reach out to me if you have any questions that weren't answered during today's really in-depth, wonderful presentation. Thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.